Our story begins with girls with a dream. But behind every dream, there's always a price. Pain, pressure, loneliness. Sometimes, even yourself. Two girls chased the same dream beneath blinding lights and endless cameras. They wanted success, fame, a place in the world that would finally belong to them. But the higher they rose, the more everything began to break apart. Because some dreams don't just ask for hard work. Sometimes they ask for your entire life. Bright white lights flooded the massive studio. The crowd screamed loudly as giant LED screens flashed across the stage. Project Icon, the survival show everyone had been waiting for. Backstage, 87 trainees stood together nervously in black uniforms. Some stretching, some silently mouthing lyrics, some pretending not to panic. Then suddenly, the lights dimmed completely. The audience erupted instantly. A spotlight illuminated center stage as Hanbin walked out calmly. Tall, sharp-featured, perfect posture, one of the biggest idols in Korea. Welcome! The crowd screamed louder. To Project Icon, backstage trainees straightened immediately. Because Hanbin wasn't just famous, he was respected and terrifyingly honest. Tonight, Hanbin continued. 87 contestants begin their journey. Contestant photos flashed rapidly behind him. Some of them will debut. A pause. Most of them won't. The backstage atmosphere shifted instantly. Reality settling in. But the final team created here. Hanbin looked directly into the camera. We'll become the next global idol group. And suddenly, everyone remembered this wasn't school anymore. This was survival. The trainee waiting room buzzed nonstop. Contestants watched performances through giant monitors while whispering constantly. She's definitely debuting. That vocal was insane. I'd cry if I had to perform after them. Near the middle row sat Nako, 17 years old. Japanese, tall with messy black bangs falling over her eyes, oversized hoodie, cargo pants, silver rings covering her fingers. She looked like a rapper immediately, which made sense because she was one. Before filming began, trainees voted her best dancer, strongest freestyle dancer, hardest choreography learner. But unlike some popular contestants, Nako wasn't famous with fans yet. Most viewers barely knew her name. She was more well-known among trainees themselves, the kind of trainee other contestants watched carefully during practice. And honestly, Nakoa herself didn't seem very aware of it. I think I forgot how walking works, she muttered while staring at the monitor. Yuna burst out laughing beside her. You say that before everything, because fear follows me everywhere. Minji sighed dramatically. If you collapse on stage, keep dancing while falling. That's friendship? That's television. Nearby trainees laughed quietly overhearing them. Because Nako was unexpectedly easygoing, not intimidating off stage at all. Then suddenly, a few trainees near the front whispered, "She's here!" The vocal girl?
Yeah.
The atmosphere shifted slightly. Jiwon entered the room with her team. And instantly, people looked. Not because she tried to draw attention, because her presence naturally did. 18 years old, Korean trainee, long dark hair, sharp eyes, cold expression, perfect posture. Jiwon carried herself with quiet confidence that made other contestants nervous automatically, and everyone already knew one thing about her, her voice. Before the show even aired, Jiwon was already known among trainees as the strongest vocalist. The trainee producers praised most, the contestant most likely to debut. People constantly whispered about her evaluations, about how stable she sounded live, about how her voice didn't sound like a trainee's voice at all. She's scary. She looks strict. I heard the vocal trainers love her. No, they're obsessed with her. Meanwhile, Jiwon calmly sat beside her teammates like none of the whispers existed. Nako glanced toward her once briefly, then immediately looked back at the monitor. She looks terrifying. Yuna snorted beside her. You're scared of everyone. No, but she looks like she'll judge my existence. Minji nodded seriously. She absolutely would. Back on stage, Hanbin glanced toward the contestant section, and now the screens behind him shifted. Contestants Nari Nako, Choi Yuna, and Kang Minji. Cheers erupted from the audience. Hanbin smiled slightly while reading the profiles. Before filming began, contestants voted Nari Nako as one of the strongest dancers in this season. The backstage camera zoomed toward Nako immediately. Unfortunately, she was drinking water. She nearly choked. Yuna immediately bent over laughing. Oh my god. Nako covered her face. Please remove the camera. Even Hanbin laughed softly. One trainee even wrote, Hanbin checked the card. She learns choreography unfairly fast. Nako pointed weakly toward the monitor backstage. That sounds like a complaint. It probably was, Minji replied. And today, Hanbin continued, they'll perform NCTU's Baggy Jeans. The audience screamed instantly. Backstage red lights flashed while staff rushed around quickly. Microphones adjusted, ears checked, camera directors shouting instructions. Yuna bounced nervously beside the stage entrance. I forgot every move. You say that every practice, Minji replied. Yes, but this time emotionally. Meanwhile, Nako adjusted her microphone quietly. More focus now. More serious. Then she looked at the girls beside her. Okay. Yuna pointed dramatically. She's entering leader mode. If we mess up, Nako said calmly, we blame the camera angles. Minji stared at her. That's your speech? Yes. Yuna started laughing again. Then Nako added quietly, just don't panic when we walk out. The other two nodded immediately. The stage exploded with red lights. Heavy bass filled the studio instantly. Then, Nako appeared center stage, and her entire energy changed. The playful girl backstage disappeared completely. Sharp movements, strong control, natural rhythm. Her messy bangs fell across her eyes, while she moved perfectly through the choreography. Not flashy, not overdone, just skilled, very skilled. Backstage trainees reacted immediately. She's seriously good. No wonder dancers like her. Her control is crazy. The dance break started, and Nako completely dominated that section effortlessly. Even Hanbin leaned forward slightly watching. Interested now? Meanwhile, Jiwon watched the performance calmly from backstage monitors. Expression unreadable. Not particularly focused on Nako specifically, just evaluating the stage like everyone else. The performance ended to loud cheers. Nako breathed heavily while smiling awkwardly afterward. One judge laughed immediately. You look calmer dancing than standing still. The audience laughed. Nako nodded seriously. Correct. Another judge smiled. Your dance control is excellent. Nako bowed politely. Thank you. Hanbin finally spoke. You understand your strengths well. Nako blinked slightly. I think so. Then nodded once. Backstage afterward, Yuna grabbed Nako dramatically. You survived. Barely. You looked cool though. Nako sighed. My legs stopped functioning halfway through. You're so dramatic. Later that evening, Hanbin stepped onto stage again, and immediately the atmosphere shifted. Because contestants already knew which team was next. Hanbin smiled slightly. And finally, the screens behind him turned black and silver. Cinematic music filled the arena. This team has been called the Avengers team by the contestants. Audience screams erupted immediately. Strong vocals. Photos appeared dramatically. Strong rep. More cheers. Strong visuals. Even louder screams. And trainees many believe are the aces of this season. Backstage contestants watched intensely now. Some nervous. Some already mentally defeated. Hanbin finally announced. Yoon Jiwon. Huge screams. Kim Daeon.
So Jimin.
And Leen Nara. The four girls walked onto stage together, and instantly, the atmosphere changed. They looked confident, too confident. Jiwon walked center naturally. Long dark hair flowing behind her. Cold expression. Sharp eyes. Relaxed posture like none of this intimidated her at all. Nako watched quietly from backstage monitors. Then muttered softly, "Yeah, no, I'm never competing against her voluntarily." Yuna burst out laughing beside her. "You're scared again." She has villain energy. She's literally standing there. Exactly. The stage lights shut off completely. Darkness filled the arena. Then suddenly, the opening synth played. The crowd exploded instantly. Aespa, whiplash. The performance started sharply. Strong synchronization, confident movements, perfect control. But the moment Jiwon's first vocal line started, the entire room reacted. Her voice was insane, live, rich tone, dip, powerful without sounding forced. Not just technically good, memorable. The kind of voice people recognized instantly. Backstage contestants stared silently. One trainee whispered, "That's the best vocal on this show." Another nodded immediately. She sounds debuted already? And honestly, they were right. Jiwon performed with complete confidence. Cold expressions, sharp eye contact, stable vocals even during intense choreography. She didn't look nervous once. Not even slightly. Then came the high note near the end. Perfectly stable, perfectly controlled. The audience completely lost it. Even Hanbin looked impressed afterward, which almost never happened. Meanwhile, backstage, Nako stared at the monitor quietly, then sighed. "Yeah, we're doomed." Yuna laughed loudly beside her. "Not you accepting defeat already." "I'm being realistic." The performance ended to deafening screams. Contestants backstage looked overwhelmed now, because suddenly, the skill gap felt real. Hanbin stepped back towards center stage. And this, he looked slowly across the contestants. It's only the beginning. The camera moved across nervous faces, excited faces, determined faces, terrified faces. Then briefly, Nako joking around with Yuna backstage, still relaxed despite everything. And then Jiwon calmly drinking water beside. Her team, while producers, continued praising her vocals nearby. Composed, untouchable. Two completely different trainees. Two completely different worlds. Neither paying special attention to the other. Not yet, but eventually that would change. Filming for the first evaluations ended near midnight. The trainees looked exhausted. Makeup slightly ruined. Voices tired, feet hurting. But nobody could rest yet, because now they had to choose dorm rooms. The contestants gathered inside the large practice hall while staff members rolled out a transparent box filled with folded papers. Dispanity chaos. No, I need roommates that sleep quietly. If someone snores, I'm reporting them. I call bottom bunk rights. Hanbin laughed from the side of the stage. "You'll survive." "No, we won't," someone shouted immediately. The room burst into laughter. One by one, contestants walked up and picked folded papers. Room numbers. Fates decided instantly. Nako unfolded hers slowly.
Room 3.
Yuna beside her gasped dramatically. "If you abandon me for cooler people, I'll cry." "You'll survive." Emotionally? Never. Across the room, Jiwon calmly opened hers.
Room 3.
Several trainees nearby reacted instantly. "Oh God, that room sounds terrifying already." Nicole looked up after hearing the whispers, then froze, because Jiwon was already walking toward the room 3 sign with her paper in hand. Nako stared silently. "No way." Minji burst out laughing beside her. "You're doomed." "She scares me. She literally hasn't done anything. That's what makes it worse." The dorm room was surprisingly big. 4 beds. Small desks. Suitcases everywhere already. Nako entered awkwardly carrying 2 bags at once, immediately tripping slightly on the doorway. Great start. A trainee named Sahi laughed from the bottom bunk. You're less intimidating than people said.
Thank God.
Then the door opened again.
And Jiwon walked in quietly.
The atmosphere shifted instantly. Not because she did anything, because she naturally carried that kind of presence. Long dark hair tied loosely back. Black hoodie. Sharp, tired eyes. She looked around the room calmly, then bowed politely. I'm Jiwon. Her voice sounded softer off stage. Less cold. Nako blinked slightly, then bowed quickly too. Nako? A small silence followed. Then Sahi whispered dramatically toward Nako. You were right. What? She does look terrifying. Jiwon heard it. Unfortunately. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, Jiwon laughed quietly. Small. Genuine. I hear that a lot. Nako blinked again. Because somehow, that laugh didn't match Jiwon's appearance at all. The survival show continued brutally. Practice after practice. Evaluation after evaluation. Endless filming. The contestants grew closer naturally over time, especially dorm roommates. Nako slowly realized something strange about Jiwon. She wasn't cold, just quiet, and honestly, kind of awkward.
One night, so he struggled opening a Ramayan package for almost 2 minutes. Jiwon silently took it, opened it instantly, handed it back. Thank you. You're welcome. Then Jiwon walked away like nothing happened. Another day, Nako walked into the dorm exhausted after practice. Jiwon looked up from her bed briefly. You missed dinner. Nako blinked. Oh, a small pause. I saved you some. Again, not cold, just bad at expressing herself naturally. Meanwhile, the show itself grew harsher. The trainees stood beneath harsh white lights waiting for rankings, some crying already, some unable to look up. Nako stood near the back row quietly, hands clasped together, trying not to panic. Because unlike Jiwon, her rankings weren't stable at all. Jiwon stayed consistently near the top. Fans loved her vocals. Her performances trended constantly online. Even her practice clips went viral. Meanwhile, Nako barely survived each round. Always near the cutoff line. Always nervous. Rank 34. The producer paused dramatically. Nako. Nako's eyes widened immediately. The cutoff was 35. Yuna screamed before Nako even reacted. You survived! Nako covered her face instantly while laughing in disbelief. Oh my god. Nearby, Jiwon glanced toward her briefly, watching Nako bow repeatedly in relief, then quietly looked away again. Weeks passed. Performances continued. Friendships slowly deepened. One night, Nako returned to the practice rooms to grab her forgotten hoodie, only to hear music playing from one of the rooms. She looked through the glass window and paused. Jiwon stood alone inside, still practicing, sweat soaked through her gray shirt, breathing uneven, the same choreography repeating again, and again, and again. But something was wrong. Jiwon kept missing one specific section, slightly behind the beat each time, frustration slowly showing on her face. Nako blinked in surprise. Because honestly, Jiwon usually looked perfect at everything. The music stopped abruptly. Jiwon sighed heavily before sitting on the floor, clearly irritated. Nako hesitated, then slowly opened the door. You okay? Jiwon looked up immediately, slightly startled. A pause. Then, I hate this choreography. Nako stared at her, then unexpectedly laughed. That's what's bothering you. Yes, you looked like someone died. I'm considering it. Jiwon rubbed her face tiredly. I can't catch the timing properly. Nako walked further inside slowly. Show me.
The music started again. Jiwon repeated the section, still slightly off. Nako watched carefully, then nodded slowly. You're overthinking the beat. Jiwon looked toward her. What? You're dancing too carefully. That's a sentence people never say to me. Nako laughed quietly. Trust me. Then Nako demonstrated the section casually. Loose. Natural. Effortless. Jiwon watched closely. And for the first time since entering the show, she looked genuinely impressed by someone's dancing.
Oh,
Nako looked back at her. See? Jiwon stood again immediately. Do it again. You said that like a producer. Please. For the next hour. They practiced together. And slowly, the awkwardness disappeared. Jiwon turned out to be unexpectedly funny once comfortable. Dry humor. Quiet sarcasm. The type that caught Neko off guard constantly. At one point, Jiwon messed up the same move again. Nako stared at her dramatically. You're exposing yourself as a vocalist. Jiwon looked offended immediately. I dance well. You dance emotionally. That's rude. It's true. For the first time, Nako laughed around Yuan naturally, without feeling nervous. And honestly, Jiwon laughed more that night too. After that night, things changed naturally. Not dramatically, just quietly. They started practicing together sometimes, eating together after evaluations, walking back to the dorm together. The other trainees noticed quickly. Yuna stared dramatically one afternoon. You're friends with Scary Vocal Girl now. Jiwon looked up immediately from her drink. Scary Vocal Girl? Nako physically froze. That nickname wasn't supposed to reach you. Sahi burst out laughing nearby. Jiwon just shook her head slowly. Incredible. As the show continued, Jiwon remained one of the top contestants consistently. But things started changing online. Certain clips spread. Short edited moments. Cold expressions. Serious comments during practice. People began calling her arrogant, intimidating, selfish. The broadcast made it worse, editing her reactions harshly, cutting conversations strangely, making her confidence look cruel. And slowly, her rankings started dropping. Meanwhile, Nako kept barely surviving elimination somehow, always shocked when her name got called, always bowing repeatedly afterward like she genuinely didn't expect it. Fans started noticing her persistence, her humility, her growth, and slowly, people became attached to her.
The finale stage glowed beneath thousands of white lights. Confetti covered the floor. Some trainees cried openly. Others stood frozen in shock. The remaining contestants waited beneath the giant screen while the final rankings were announced one by one. Nako stood near the end of the line quietly, hands clasped tightly together, still unable to believe she even made the finale. Beside her, Jiwon looked calm as always. Straight posture, unreadable expression, but noticeably quieter than usual. Fourth place. The producer paused dramatically. Nare Nako. For 2 full seconds, Nako didn't react, like her brain stopped functioning. Then suddenly, her eyes widened completely. What? The audience erupted instantly. Nako covered her mouth while laughing in disbelief, tears immediately filling her eyes. Behind her, so he screamed louder than anyone. Oh my god, she debuted! Nako kept bowing repeatedly while walking forward, still looking genuinely shocked. Because honestly, she spent the entire show barely surviving eliminations. Nobody expected her to rank that high, not even herself. Back in line, Jiwon quietly watched her, and for the first time that night, a small smile appeared briefly on her face. The rankings continued. Third place. The atmosphere became tense instantly, because everyone already knew who it would be. Jiwon. The audience screamed loudly, but even through the cheers, the shock was obvious. Because throughout most of the show, Jiwon ranked first consistently. But after weeks of evil editing and online criticism about her attitude, her rankings slowly dropped. Clips of her serious expressions spread online constantly. Practice disagreements edited harshly. Quiet moments turned into cold personality compilations. And despite how talented she was, people started calling her arrogant, intimidating, selfish. Meanwhile, the people who actually knew her understood the truth, including Nako. Jiwon walked forward calmly after hearing her name. Professional, composed, no visible disappointment. But Nako noticed a subtle tightness in her expression anyway. Even if nobody else did, the final 7 members stood together for the first time. V. Loon, Lee Nara, Kim Daeun, Yoon Jiwon, Nare Nako, Yu Charon, Han Soo-hee, Seo Jaemin. Hanbin stepped forward smiling slightly. Congratulations. The camera flashed toward the members. You are now V. Loon. The new dorm felt strangely quiet that night. Mostly because everyone was too exhausted to process reality properly. Suitcases filled the living room. Flower bouquets covered the kitchen counter. Staff members rushed in and out constantly. So he collapsed dramatically onto the couch. We survived psychological warfare. Charon nodded seriously. I genuinely forgot what peace feels like.
Meanwhile, Nako sat cross-legged on the floor staring blankly at the official contract folder in front of her. We debuted. Nobody answered immediately because honestly, it still didn't feel real. Then suddenly, Nara screamed into a pillow. And the room finally exploded into chaos. A week later, Loon entered Axis Entertainment's conference room together for the first official company meeting. The CEO smiled toward the members. You are currently the most anticipated rookie group in Korea. The giant screen behind him displayed trending headlines already, flooding social media. Project Icon Group officially confirmed.
Yoon Jiwon finally debuts.
Narai Nako's rise shocks viewers. Loon expected to dominate fifth generation. You already have attention, the CEO continued, but attention disappears quickly. The room quieted immediately. So your debut, the screen changed again, needs to become an event. Later that night, the members gathered in the practice room reading official position papers. Nara gasped dramatically. Oh wow, Jiwon Senta and main vocal, completely shocking information. Jiwon looked up flatly. You're annoying. Correct. Honestly, nobody looked surprised, even among trainees. Jiwon's vocals were already considered some of the strongest in fifth generation before debut. Meanwhile, Nako stared at her own paper quietly. Main dancer, main rapper. Sahi leaned dramatically over her shoulder. You carry the dance line now. Nako sighed immediately. That sounds stressful. You dance like rent was due every mission. That's because survival shows are evil. The room burst into laughter. Meanwhile, Jiwon sat near the mirrors reading silently, still carrying that naturally cold aura. But now, the members understood her better. She wasn't mean, just awkward, and weirdly funny once comfortable. Shorin looked toward Nako quietly. You're one of the only people she talks to comfortably. Neko blinked. Really? Across the room, Jiwon immediately answered without looking up. She talks too much. Silence becomes impossible. Nako stared at her in disbelief. Mean. But Jiwon was already quietly smiling afterward. A producer entered the practice room carrying demo files. The members immediately sat up straighter. This, he announced dramatically, is your debut title track. The speakers started playing heavy synths, sharp bass, dark, elegant production. The atmosphere changed instantly. The title appeared on the monitor. Venom Heart. The concept was dark luxury, obsession mixed with ambition, and somehow the song fit every member perfectly. Then came the bridge. Jiwon's vocals filled the room completely. Rich, deep, powerful enough to change the entire feeling of the song. Everyone looked up immediately, even though it was only the guide version. Then Nako's rap followed afterward. Low tone, sharp delivery. Nara physically pointed toward the speaker. Oh, we're becoming famous. The next months became exhausting. The members practically lived inside practice rooms. One night, Nako walked into the studio at nearly 2 a.m. expecting it to be empty. Jiwon sat alone on the floor, surrounded by lyric sheets. Still recording vocals. Neko blinked. You're still here? Jiwon removed one side of her headphones slowly. The bridge annoys me. Nako stared at her. You sound insane already. It can sound better. Then Nako sat beside her quietly. You know, normal people sleep. Jiwon looked toward her seriously. Not during debut month. That's terrifying. Nako stayed anyway, just sitting there while Jiwon continued recording. Quiet company becoming natural between them now. 1 month later, Valoon's debut showcase sold out instantly. Fans filled the venue holding banners and light sticks, media cameras everywhere, reporters shouting nonstop, "Nicole here! Jiwon, please wave. How does it feel to finally debut?" Backstage, the members stood silently moments before walking on stage. Nervous energy filling the room. Jimin whispered softly, "We're actually doing this." Nako adjusted her microphone quietly, then glanced toward Jiwon beside her. "You nervous?" Jiwon answered honestly for once. "A little." Nako physically froze. "Oh my god." Jan frowned slightly. "What? You experienced a human emotion." Sahi immediately started laughing nearby. Even Jiwon rolled her eyes while smiling slightly afterward. And somehow, everyone relaxed after that. The lights shut off completely. Silver smoke spread across the stage. The audience screamed instantly. Then, Valoon appeared beneath the lights for the first time as an official group, and the atmosphere exploded. Venom Heart became an instant hit. The choreography flooded social media within days. Nako's dance break went viral internationally. Jiwon's bridge note trended across Korean platforms immediately. People called Valoon monster rookies of 5th generation, the strongest debut in years. The leaders of the 5th generation wave. The achievements came terrifyingly fast. First month achievements, 2 million album sales. Rookie record for first week sales. Music show wins within 8 days. Global chart entries. Sold out fan showcases. Viral dance challenge worldwide. Jiwon quickly became known as one of the strongest 5th generation vocalists. The idol with the best live vocals among rookies. The ice queen of 5th generation because of her aura. Meanwhile, Nako became famous for her insane stage presence, powerful dance breaks, viral fancons after every stage. Being one of the strongest dancers in 5th generation, late that night, the members returned to the dorm exhausted after another schedule. Trophies already lined the shelves. Brand gifts stacked near the walls. Flowers everywhere. Sahi collapsed dramatically onto the couch. "We're famous." Nara pointed toward the TV. "No, actually famous." News headlines about VA Loon continued playing nonstop. Meanwhile, Nako stood near the kitchen, quietly drinking water, still trying to process everything. Then she noticed Jiwon standing alone by the balcony, looking silently over Seoul's night skyline. Not sad, not emotional, just thoughtful. Nako walked beside her casually. "We survived." Jiwon glanced toward her briefly. "Barely." Nako smiled faintly. "But we did." Down below, fans still waited outside the company building hoping to see them. Valoon's name glowing across giant screens already. Everything they dreamed about had finally started. None of them knew yet how quickly dreams could turn into something painful. The first 3 months after debut passed like a storm. Schedules everywhere, no sleep, constant cameras, constant noise. Every performance trended. Every airport appearance became news. Every tiny interaction between members spread instantly across social media. Especially 2 people.
Jiwon.
Narai, Nako. Fans became obsessed with their dynamic without either of them realizing it at first. Because somehow, they were complete opposites. Jiwon was quiet, elegant, cold. Nakoe was relaxed, funny, chaotic. But on camera, their chemistry felt strangely natural. Too natural. The members sat crowded together during a popular variety show recording. The host grinned mischievously. "Who's the messiest member in the dorm?" Every single member immediately pointed toward Nako. Nako looked betrayed. "This is targeted harassment." Sahi nodded seriously. "You left ramen in the practice room for 2 days. That was emotional support, Roman. The room burst into laughter. Then suddenly,
The MC pointed toward Jiwon.
the screen behind them displayed multiple clips. Jiwon fixing Nico's microphone. Jiwon waiting for Nako during airports. Jiwon quietly handing her water bottles. Jiwon staring at Nako while she talked. The audience screamed immediately. Nako froze. The MC laughed loudly. Jiwon-si, take care of Nako a lot. Jiwon stayed calm. She forgets basic survival instincts. Nako pointed dramatically. See, that's mean. But Jiwon was already smiling slightly afterward. The cameras caught it perfectly. That clip alone gained millions of views. The more schedules they had, the closer they became naturally. Always sitting together during makeup, sharing headphones during flights, practicing late at night together, walking beside each other automatically. It stopped feeling intentional after a while. It just became habit. One night, Nako fell asleep accidentally in the practice room. When she woke up briefly, a jacket rested over her shoulders. Jiwon's. Nearby, Jiwon quietly continued reading lyric sheets like nothing happened. Small things, the kind that slowly became dangerous. Because somewhere, during those months, Nicole realized something terrifying. She loved her. Actually loved her. Not admiration. Not friendship. Not a crush that would disappear later. Quiet. Painful. Hopeless. That realization ruined her peacefully. The internet became worse. Or better. Depending on perspective. Fans started obsessively shipping them together. The fandom called them Gina. Compilation videos flooded social media. Jiwon only smiles at Nako. Nako making Jiwon soft for 11 minutes. Gina moments that don't look platonic. One clip especially went viral. During an encore stage, Nako nearly slipped because of confetti, and Jiwon immediately grabbed her wrist instinctively before she fell. The audience screamed so loudly the members started laughing. Afterward, Nara showed them the clip backstage. You two are never beating the allegations. Nako nearly choked on her drink. What allegations? Meanwhile, Jiwon looked completely calm, which somehow made everything worse. Valoon started traveling constantly for festivals. Busan, Bangkok, Paris, Singapore, Tokyo. The members barely stayed in Korea anymore. Airports became routine. Stage rehearsals became routine. Crowds screaming their names became routine. And somehow, Nako always found herself looking for Jiwon first in unfamiliar places, without thinking, automatically. Meanwhile, Jiwon slowly started relying on Nako too, in quieter ways. During long flights, she sat beside her. During interviews, her eyes unconsciously searched for Nako first before answering difficult questions. During crowded events, she stayed close without realizing it. But, unlike Nako, Jiwon never thought too deeply about what those feelings meant. Not yet. Tokyo Dome City Hall glowed beneath massive white lights. Japanese fans screamed loudly as Valoon appeared on stage. For Nako, this schedule felt different because this was home. Japanese interviews, Japanese broadcast, Japanese fans shouting her name everywhere. The members noticed immediately how much more relaxed she became there. More talkative. More expressive. More emotional. Even Jiwon quietly watched her differently during those days. One night after rehearsals, the members walked together through quiet Tokyo streets wearing masks and hoodies. Managers walking ahead, the city glowing around them. Nicole laughed at something Sahi said beside her. Bright, carefree, and briefly, Jiwon smiled while watching her. A real smile. Soft. Unguarded. Nako noticed accidentally and immediately looked away afterward. Because moments like that hurt now. After Japan, something shifted. Quietly, but completely. Jiwon changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically. Just little things at first. She smiled less. talked less, stayed alone more often, at schedules. She looked distracted, exhausted, like she hadn't slept properly even during live broadcasts. Fans noticed immediately. Comments flooded everywhere. Is Jiwon okay? She looks tired. Why does she seem sad lately? Something feels wrong. The members noticed too, especially Nako. One night, Nako found Jiwon alone in the dorm kitchen at nearly 3 a.m. Dark apartment, only refrigerator light illuminating the room. Jiwon stood silently drinking water. Expression empty. Nako frowned slightly. You should sleep. Jiwon looked toward her slowly. You too. But her voice sounded distant, like her mind was somewhere else completely. Nako stepped closer quietly. Are you okay? A pause. Longer than usual. Then Jiwon smiled faintly. Small. Forced. I'm fine. And somehow, that answer worried Nako more than anything else. 3 days later, the members were called into the company meeting room unexpectedly. The atmosphere already felt wrong. Too quiet. Managers avoiding eye contact. Then the CEO spoke carefully. Jean will temporarily suspend activities. Silence. Sahi blinked first. What? Due to exhaustion and health concerns, the manager continued. She'll be taking time to rest. Nako stared blankly, not fully understanding. She'll stay with her family for now. The room felt suddenly cold. Nara frowned immediately. How long? We don't know yet. Then softly. She's tired. When the members returned to the dorm, Jiwon's bags were already packed near the doorway. That somehow made everything feel real instantly, painfully real. The apartment stayed unusually quiet. Nobody joking, nobody talking loudly. Jiwon emerged from her room wearing a black hoodie and mask, calm as always. Too calm. Sahi hugged her first while crying immediately. Sharon looked emotional too. Even Nara seemed genuinely shaken. Meanwhile, Nako stood near the kitchen silently, unable to move properly, because somehow this felt wrong. Like something much bigger was happening underneath everything. Something nobody was saying. Then finally, Jiwon looked toward her. Their eyes met briefly. A pause. Heavy. Quiet. Then Jiwon walked closer slowly. Take care of the members while I'm gone. Nako stared at her. That sounds long. Jiwon didn't answer immediately. Then softly. I'll come back. But for the first time since meeting her, Nako wasn't sure if Jiwon actually believed that herself. And suddenly, fear settled inside her chest for the very first time. Real fear. Because love was one thing, but losing someone? That was worse. And somehow, Nako felt like that was exactly what was beginning. 4 months passed slowly, painfully, slowly, and somehow, Jiwon never really came back. Not emotionally. Not to them. The Loon continued promoting as 6 members. Schedules never stopped. The company never stopped. At first, fans believed the hiatus would only last a few weeks. Then a month. Then longer. But eventually, people stopped asking when she would return and started asking if she would return at all. Meanwhile, the members stopped mentioning her publicly unless necessary. Not because they didn't care, because the company clearly wanted silence. The Valoon practice room felt wrong without her. Too empty. Too quiet. The members stood around listening to the comeback demo while staff discussed. Choreography changes. This part used to be Juan's bridge. Silence. Nobody answered, because hearing her name out loud still hurt. The company redistributed her lines carefully. So, Sharon covered most of the vocals. Nara took some center parts, but everybody noticed the gap anyway. Fans especially. The comeback album still sold incredibly well. The title track topped charts immediately. Music show wins came quickly, but every encore stage felt incomplete somehow, like someone important was missing from the picture. Jiwon never called. Not once. She replied sometimes in the group chat, very politely, very briefly. Congratulations on the comeback. You all did well. Good job on the win today. That was it. No jokes. No emojis anymore. No late night conversations. Nothing. And every single message somehow hurt Nako more than silence would have. Because Jiwon sounded like a stranger now. One night after schedules, Nako sat alone in the dorm living room staring at her phone. The latest message still open. Congratulations on your 4th win. Short. Cold. Formal. Nako reread it again quietly, then locked her phone, trying not to cry over 3 sentences like an idiot, because this wasn't supposed to hurt this much, but it did. She missed her constantly. Every day, every schedule, every stage, every stupid little thing. And the worst part, Nako still loved her exactly the same. Maybe even more now. Late at night, Nara walked into the kitchen half asleep and paused, seeing Nako sitting there silently. You didn't sleep yet? Nako shook her head slightly. Nara hesitated briefly. Then Triley asked, You miss her a lot, don't you? That question alone almost shattered her. Nako laughed softly, weakly. Is it obvious? Nara sat beside her. You look miserable. Thanks. I mean, emotionally. A small silence followed. Then Nara sighed quietly. She's shutting everyone out. Nako looked down at her hands. Not everyone. Nara frowned slightly. What? Nako swallowed slowly. She still replies to me first. A pause. But it feels like she's disappearing anyway. A few days later, Nako finally reached her limit. Another schedule. Another performance. Another cold message. Another night pretending she was okay. She wasn't okay anymore, not even slightly. So after practice ended, Nako quietly grabbed her jacket and left without telling anyone. The train ride felt endless. Rain hitting the windows softly, her heart pounding harder the closer she got. Because honestly, part of her was terrified. Terrified Jiwon wouldn't want to see her. Terrified she'd become a burden. Terrified she cared more than Jiwon ever did. But none of that stopped her.
The neighborhood was quiet. Dokwaye. Nako stood outside the gate, staring at the house nervously. Hands cold despite the weather. Then finally, she pressed the bell. No answer. For a second, she considered leaving. Then suddenly, the door opened slowly, and Nako froze. Jiwon looked terrible. Not physically hurt, but exhausted in a way that felt deeper than tiredness.
Pale skin.
Dark circles beneath her eyes. Oversized hoodie hanging loosely off her frame. Like she hadn't properly slept in months. And worst of all, her eyes looked empty. Completely empty. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Jiwon stared at her in shock. Like she genuinely didn't expect her to come. Then suddenly, her expression broke. Not dramatically.
Not loudly.
Just quietly. Painfully. Tears filled her eyes instantly. And before Nako could even react, Jiwon started crying. Nako's chest tightened painfully. Because this was impossible to imagine. Jiwon didn't cry. She endured things. Silently. Alone. But now, she looked completely shattered. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. Jiwon covered her face, immediately like she regretted breaking down. But the tears wouldn't stop anymore. Months of pain collapsing at once. Nako stepped toward her instinctively, then immediately pulled her into her arms. And the second Jiwon felt someone holding her, she completely broke. Her hands clutched tightly onto Nako's hoodie, shoulders shaking violently. Silent crying turning into desperate breathing. Nako started crying too almost immediately, because seeing her like this felt unbearable. "It's okay," she whispered shakily, even though she had no idea what happened. "It's okay." But Jiwon only cried harder. Later that night, they sat together on Jiwon's bedroom floor quietly, rain tapping softly against the windows. The room dark except for a small lamp near the bed. Jiwon sat curled beside the wall, wearing oversized sleeves over her hands. Still emotionally exhausted. Still silent. Meanwhile, Nako stayed beside her quietly, not forcing questions, not pressuring her, just staying, because somehow she understood instinctively that this pain was bigger than burnout, bigger than exhaustion. Something terrible had happened, but Jiwon couldn't say it, couldn't force the words out. Not about the manager, not about the company, not about the fear, not about how trapped she felt. Because every time she tried, she remembered the threats. The way the company looked at her like she was inconvenient, difficult, replaceable. She remembered them saying, "Every idol goes through difficult things. Don't be dramatic. Do you want to destroy the group? If this becomes public, everyone suffers." And worst of all, she remembered the warning. If she talked, the others could become targets too, including Nako. So instead, Jiwon just sat there silently, trying not to fall apart again. Then quietly, Nako reached for her hand. Warm.
Careful.
And for the first time in months, Jiwon didn't feel completely alone anymore. Very late that night, Jiwon finally fell asleep beside her, exhaustion winning eventually, still curled slightly toward Nako unconsciously, like some part of her needed the closeness. Meanwhile, Nako stayed awake, staring at the ceiling quietly. Her chest hurt unbearably, because now she understood something clearly. Jiwon wasn't resting. She was drowning. And whatever happened to her, it broke her completely. Nako looked toward the sleeping girl beside her, eyes still slightly swollen from crying, expression exhausted even in sleep. Then quietly, very carefully, Nako moved closer and held her gently again, as if trying to protect her from something invisible, something terrifying, something she still didn't understand yet. The next morning felt strangely quiet. Soft rain still tapped lightly against the windows. The room smelled faintly like fabric softener and cold coffee. Nako woke up, slowly on the floor beside the bed. For a second, she forgot where she was. Then she looked up and saw Jiwon awake already. She sat against the headboard silently, wearing an oversized black sweater. Hair slightly messy. Eyes tired, but calmer than yesterday. Their eyes met quietly, neither speaking immediately. Then, unexpectedly, Jiwon spoke first. "You stayed." Nako blinked softly. "Of course I stayed."
A pause.
Then Jiwon looked away slightly, like she didn't know what to do with kindness anymore. The day passed slowly, peacefully, almost painfully normal. They stayed in Jiwon's room most of the time, talking quietly, sometimes not talking at all. Nako learned little things she never noticed before. Jiwon liked keeping the curtains half open. She reread old lyrics when anxious. And strangely, she laughed more that day too. Not loudly, but genuinely. At one point, Nako failed opening a snack bag completely, and chips exploded across the floor. Jiwon stared at the mess silently, then unexpectedly laughed into her sleeve. A real laugh. Soft. Warm. Nako froze dramatically. Oh my God. Jiwon frowned slightly. What? You laughed twice in one day. Shut up. But even while saying it, Jiwon looked lighter somehow. And honestly, that made what happened later even crueler. Late afternoon sunlight filled the room softly. Golden. Quiet. Nako sat cross-legged near the bed. Jiwon scrolled absent-mindedly through music on her phone. Neither were speaking much anymore, but the silence felt comfortable. Close. Then suddenly, Nako's chest tightened painfully, because she couldn't keep it inside anymore. Not after months. Not after yesterday. Not after seeing Jiwon cry in her arms. So before she could stop herself, the words came out. Messy. Unplanned. Terrified. I love you. Silence. Nako immediately wanted to disappear. Actually disappear. She laughed nervously afterward. Weakly. Wow, that sounded pathetic. Jiwon slowly looked up from her phone. Unreadable expression. Nako's heart started beating impossibly fast. I know this is probably horrible timing, and then suddenly, Jiwon moved. Fast enough to silence her completely, she kissed her first. Nako froze instantly, completely. Because she dreamed about this moment too many times already. Too many nights, too many rehearsals. Too many accidental touches and almost moments. And now, Jiwon was kissing her. Actually kissing her, soft at first, careful. Like she was scared of breaking something fragile. Then deeper, more desperate. Months of loneliness collapsing between them all at once. Nako's hands instinctively moved to Jiwon's waist, pulling her closer immediately. Like she'd been starving for this, for her. Jiwon's fingers trembled slightly against Nako's hoodie. And that tiny detail somehow shattered her heart completely. Because beneath everything, Jiwon still felt fragile, painfully fragile. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing unevenly, Nako couldn't stop smiling. Actually smiling, hopelessly. Meanwhile, Jiwon just stared at her quietly. Eyes softer than Nako had ever seen before. Then quietly, almost like a confession itself, Jiwon whispered, "You make things feel less painful." And Nako thought, stupidly, that maybe things would finally get better now. An hour later, Nako grabbed her jacket while smiling to herself like an idiot. "I'm buying ramen." Jiwon sat curled near the bed quietly watching her. "You don't have to." "I know," Nako smiled again. "But you barely ate yesterday." Jiwon looked at her silently for a second, then nodded once. "Okay." And somehow, that tiny moment felt domestic.
Safe. Real.
Before leaving, Nako leaned down quickly and kissed her again. Short, warm. Jiwon looked slightly surprised afterward, which immediately made Nako laugh. "You're cute." "I regret everything already." Liar. Then Nako left the apartment, smiling harder than she had in months. The grocery bag felt warm in Nako's hands as she climbed the stairs back up. Still thinking about the kiss. Still replaying Jiwon's expression in her head. For the first time in months, she felt hopeful, actually hopeful. Then she opened the door and froze. The grocery bag slipped from her hands instantly. Ramen packages scattering across the floor. Because across the room, Jiwon hung motionless from the ceiling. A rope around her throat, a chair fallen beneath her. Still, silent, gone, Nako stopped breathing. Her mind refused to understand what she was seeing. Refused completely, no. The word came out broken instantly, barely audible. Jiwon's phone lay shattered across the floor nearby. Destroyed completely, like she made sure nothing inside it survived. And suddenly, everything felt wrong. The room, the silence, the air itself. Nako stumbled forward shakily, hands trembling violently. No. But deep down, before even touching her, she already knew. Jiwon was dead. The scream that left Nako's throat barely sounded human. She collapsed beneath her immediately, crying so hard she couldn't breathe properly. Couldn't think. Couldn't process anything. Just hours ago, Jiwon kissed her, held her, looked at her softly. Just hours ago, she was alive. Nako's hands shook uncontrollably while grabbing desperately at the rope. At Jiwon's sleeves, at anything. Like she could somehow undo it. Like love alone could reverse death. But nothing changed. And slowly, reality settled in piece by piece. Cruel, unforgiving, permanent. Jiwon was gone. And Nako never even got the chance to save her.
Later.
Sirens filled the street outside. Managers arrived. Police. Chaos everywhere. But Nako barely heard any of it. She sat, silently wrapped in a blanket near the hallway floor. Completely numb. Eyes empty from crying too much. Someone spoke nearby. Questions. Voices. Movement. None of it reached her properly. Because all she could think about was this morning.
That laugh.
That kiss. The way Jiwon looked at her quietly before she left. And worst of all, the final thing Jiwon ever said to her. You make things feel less painful. Nako lowered her head slowly. Hands shaking again. Because now, pain was all that remained. The news exploded overnight. Valoon member Yoon Jiwon found dead. Articles flooded every platform instantly. Fans cried outside the company building. Memorials filled the streets. Candles. Flowers. Letters. But inside Axis Entertainment, everything became controlled. Carefully controlled. Executives held emergency meetings non-stop. Lawyers arrived. Phones confiscated. Staff warned not to speak publicly. The official statement released, only 2 days later. Yoon Jiwon had been struggling emotionally during her hiatus. We ask everyone to respect the family's privacy. That was it. Details. No explanations. Nothing. And the company made sure it stayed that way. Because the truth died with Jiwon. The Valoon dorm became silent after her death. Unnaturally silent. Nobody played music anymore. Nobody joked loudly. Nobody stayed in the living room long. Even Serhi stopped talking most days. Nako, Nako looked destroyed. Not crying loudly. Not screaming. Gone. Like part of her disappeared completely. She barely ate. Barely slept. Barely spoke. And every single time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The rope. The chair. Jiwon's body hanging motionless. And worst of all, that morning, that kiss. Those soft eyes looking at her like maybe life could still become bearable. Then hours later, gone. Rain poured heavily the day of the funeral. Gray skies. Cold wind. Black umbrellas everywhere. Fans lined the streets, silently holding flowers. Some crying openly. Some unable to even look toward the building. Inside, the members sat together near the front. Completely shattered. Jiwon's funeral portrait rested surrounded by white flowers. Beautiful. Calm. Smiling softly, in a way she rarely did publicly. Nako stared at the photo numbly, unable to process that this was real. Because somehow, her brain still expected Jiwon to walk through the doors coldly and say this was all a misunderstanding. But she never did. Jiwon's mother cried quietly beside relatives. Her younger brothers sat, silently staring at the floor. Broken. Meanwhile, the members looked devastated. Nara cried openly. Sahi couldn't stop shaking. Sharon held him in his hand tightly while trying not to cry herself. But Nako looked the worst, because guilt was eating her alive. If she stayed, would Jiwon still be alive? If she noticed something sooner, would things change? If she confessed earlier, loved her louder, held her tighter, could she have saved her? Those thoughts destroyed her slowly during the entire funeral. Then finally, Nako broke completely. She collapsed, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Managers rushed toward her immediately, but she pushed them away desperately. I left her alone. Her voice sounded ruined, completely ruined. I left her, and deep inside, Nako knew something else too. Something she couldn't explain properly. This didn't feel right. Jiwon was hurting. Yes. Broken. Yes. But something about everything felt wrong. Incomplete. Like pieces were missing. And Nako couldn't let that feeling go. Days passed. Then weeks. But life didn't move again properly afterward. Not for Nako. Velun activities stopped temporarily. The dorm stayed dark most nights. The members avoided interviews completely. Meanwhile, Nako existed mechanically. Nothing more. Wake up. Cry. Pretend to eat. Cry again. Sleep for 2 hours. Wake up crying again. The pain never became smaller, only heavier. At night, she replayed every memory endlessly. Jiwon laughing quietly in practice rooms. Jiwon fixing her microphone. Jiwon smiling in Japan. Jiwon kissing her. And then, that room. That horrifying silence. Nako started investigating quietly. Secretly. Looking through articles. Old staff rumors. Anonymous forum posts. Company employee discussions. Anything. And slowly, she realized something terrifying. Too many people inside Access Entertainment acted nervous after Jiwon's death. Too careful, too rehearsed. Even managers avoided her eyes whenever she mentioned Jiwon. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. Rain poured endlessly across the cemetery. Cold, merciless. The sky looked almost black above the rows of graves. Nako knelt alone in front of Jiwon's grave, soaked completely, hair plastered against her face, hands trembling from exhaustion. She had been there for hours. Nobody came to stop her. Nobody even knew where she was. Only Jiwon. Only this grave. Only the silence she left behind. Flowers rested beside the headstone. Fresh ones, because Nako kept replacing them every few days. Her fingers brushed across Jiwon's name. Slowly, carefully, like touching it too hard might somehow hurt her. A broken laugh escaped her. Then another sob. I'm sorry. The words barely existed anymore. Her voice had become raw from crying. I'm so sorry. Rainwater and tears mixed together. I should have stayed. Her shoulders shook violently. I should have known. The cemetery remained silent. Nako lowered her forehead against the gravestone. Eyes squeezed shut. Breathing uneven. You were hurting. A pause. And I didn't save you. The guilt felt unbearable now. Like something alive inside her chest. Eating her from the inside. Weeks had passed. But nothing became easier. She still woke up, expecting messages that never came. Still reached for a phone call that would never happen. Still turned around sometimes because she thought she heard Jiwon's voice. Then remembered. Again. And again. And again. Gone. Nako's fingers curled against the stone. I loved you. The confession sounded different now. Not hopeful. Not nervous. Not terrified. Just broken. I loved you so much. Her breathing hitched violently. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Thunder rolled across the sky, and I never got enough time. Tears fell endlessly. We finally had one day. Her voice shattered completely. One day. The kiss. The laughter. The way Jiwon looked at her. The way she smiled. The way she said things felt less painful. One day. And then she was gone. Nako covered her face, sobbing openly now, no longer trying to hold anything back. Please. The word came out like a prayer. Please let me see you again. Her chest hurt, badly now, but she ignored it. I'll do anything. Another sob. Anything. The pain spread through her body. Sharp. Heavy. Wrong. But none of it mattered. Not compared to this. Not compared to losing her. Nako slowly leaned against the gravestone. Exhausted. Cold. Completely empty. Her eyes drifted toward Jiwon's name one final time. And somehow, for a brief second, she imagined Jiwon smiling. Softly, the way she did that day. Nako smiled too. A small one. Fragile. Heartbroken. I miss you. Her voice was barely a whisper. Then quietly, almost lovingly. Wait for me. The rain continued falling. And slowly, Nako's eyes closed. Her breathing grew weaker. Then weaker. Then weaker still. Until eventually, there was nothing left. The cemetery stood silent beneath the storm. Flowers scattered across the wet grass. Rain falling endlessly against the stone. And beside Jiwon's grave, Nako finally stopped hurting. Her heart stopped. She passed away on the grave of the person she loved most. The rain kept falling, and the world kept turning, and they stopped hurting, because both of them were gone.